If you're tired of hard water, this video is for you. Today, we're joined by Craig the Water Guy Phillips, a 30-year water treatment veteran, and he's going to bring all of his experience to help us find the best water softener for your home. He'll explain the differences between a salt-based water softener and a salt-free water conditioner, and he'll talk about some of the benefits you can get from a high-efficiency or upflow water softener. And then he'll talk about some of the common mistakes and pitfalls people make when sizing and selecting the right water softener for their home. So stick around because it's all coming up. Welcome to the Freshness Info Series. I am Eric Ritland, and today we are joined by Craig Phillips, aka Craig the Water Guy. Thanks for jumping aboard today, Craig.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Eric. How you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm excited to jump into our ultimate guide about everything hard water and water softeners today. But before we jump into the meat of the conversation, can you just share a little bit about your background in the water treatment industry and what led you to start Quality Water Treatment?
So, 86, right around there. I got my first sales job working for a national water treatment company, which was in-home sales, where appointments were made for you. We go from door to door, stuff like that. And I learned a lot there. I learned kind of the ins and outs of how those type of sales organizations work. One day I was over at my parents' house because they were on their own well where I grew up, and the owner of a local water treatment company was out there working on their equipment, and his name was Bart. And Bart started talking to me. I told him what I was doing, and he goes, really? He goes, well, that's interesting. He goes, I'm actually looking for somebody. It's not sales right now, but it could turn into sales later, where I need somebody to do salt delivery for me, because they offered salt delivery service for their customers, as well as other their competition's customers as well that didn't do salt delivery. And I'm looking for somebody to do that, and if you're interested, let me know. So I talked to my wife about it, and decided to go ahead and take that job and leave the door-to-door sales things, get rid of that part of it and try to learn something new. So it kind of elevated from there, where I started out with the salt service, and then he started teaching me how to troubleshoot equipment, water softeners, and other types of water treatment equipment. And then he taught me how to test water and learn how to analyze it and put that data and information to use by being able to figure out what's wrong with systems, so I can actually repair them properly instead of guessing. And that kind of led into actually being able to recommend systems. A lot of times what we were finding out in the field there is we would find people that either the equipment they had installed before was not the proper equipment from the get-go, or their water qualities kind of changed over the years and their needs had changed, where what they had just wasn't the right equipment at all. So when we run the test and look at the whole situation, some cases we ended up having to either replace everything that they had or just adding to what they had in order to get them good water, right? And so it's kind of progressed from there. I went from salt delivery from sales from a different company, from salt delivery to technician to doing sales, because it kind of fell in with being a technician, because you'd be out there talking to the customers and building a relationship with them and figuring out what the issues are and how to fix those issues. And then I start doing installations as well. So I was doing a little bit of everything at that point. Then for a short period of time, I became a general manager for that company, where I was training people the same way that I got trained. And right around 89, 90, the store they sent me to open up ended up having some issues up there with a spotted owl issue hit up there. So they closed down on the lumber mill. So there's really no work up there. So it really kind of forced me into, after trying it up there for about 6 months, and literally, I had 3 small children, literally living on fish. I mean, we could not afford we could barely afford to pay our rent because I just didn't have a job anymore, and couldn't find work up there. So I would literally scab work where I could, and go fishing every chance I could just to put food on the table. And so we literally lived on bass and trout for quite some time there. So ended up opening my own company with really nothing. It was just a lot of drive, a lot of hard work back in my own hometown. I was gone all week, away from the family. I take my old Dodge pickup and drive 4 hours down to where I grew up, which is where the other company was that I worked for, and lived in my shop down there, and just worked my butt off and started building the business up. And about a year later, I finally made enough to move the family down there where we could all be close to each other again. So that's how I started the company. It's just bare bones, not a lot of money to back me up at all. It's just a lot of hard work and knowledge, that got me there, right? So I kind of did that and built the business up from there. 2001, I think it was, a customer of mine that was a sheriff, local sheriff. He was taking night classes at a local college to learn how to build websites back then. And he was on his own well, and he needed a water storage tank, like a 2,300 gallon storage tank, because his well was low producing, as well as water treatment equipment. And he really needed it because he kept running out of water. So it wasn't really an option for him not to have something out there. But he didn't have the money really to pay for it all. So we made a trade where, he paid for part of the equipment through building a website for me. And the website was basically just didn't do anything with it for about a year. And I hurt my back pulling a well pump by hand because we couldn't get a pump truck in to do it. And at that point, I start teaching myself how to turn that website into an e-commerce site and learn how to do Google pay-per-click advertising and all that stuff. That was very foreign to me. And then within a year, the internet part of the business start taking off, and it was actually doing better than my shop. So after a couple of years, I ended up selling my local shop to a guy that was working for me, doing water treatment and pump and well work. And I kept the internet stuff for myself, and it's no looking back ever since. So we've been online for over 20 years now, selling water treatment equipment. Water softeners, iron filters, pH neutralizer, disinfection systems, carbon filters, reverse osmosis system, anything and everything that has to do with water treatment. So that's how I got started, and that's kind of the history of it.
Wow. So you've done it all. And it's also an incredible just kind of business story to get to where you are now. But maybe before we talk about water softeners, the best treatment options, and how to identify which one is best for you, let's just kind of go into what exactly is hard water, and if it makes a difference for the people that have municipal or city water versus well water, if there's any differences that they should look at or consider before we get into it.
Yeah, sure. So city water is, of course, a lot easier to treat than private well water. There's quite a bit of differences there, but we can touch on city water first because that's really kind of the most common. City water, your municipal supply companies that basically treat your water and send it to you on a daily basis. They can only treat so much. They try to keep things below what we call the MCL, maximum contaminated levels. They're highly regulated on that type of stuff. But to take hard water, and just about every water supply out there is hard water, and to make it soft for the whole community would be almost an impossible task, right? So, and then you also have people that are irrigating with that same water, so there's really no way to separate that. So it's really up to the homeowner to be able to treat their own water for for whatever needs to be treated. Hard water is basically a concentration of minerals such as calcium and magnesium. It's rainwater in general is pretty soft. It's also has a low pH, so when it hits the ground, it starts picking up all those minerals, and that's where that comes from. So hard water is really not meant to be there for your daily usage because it's very destructive, not just for your appliances and your plumbing and your hot water heater, as well as your skin and your hair and your clothing and everything else. It just makes life really difficult. And a lot of people out there that have lived with hard water understand that. I mean, your skin starts drying up, you get bad dandruff, your skin starts, you start, instead of let's say you're 40 years old, all of a sudden you look like you're 60, right? Because because that hard water is just wreaking havoc on your skin and your pores. So it's very important to treat the water and get that hardness out of there, because it ends up costing you a lot, and it's just not a good quality of life, and everybody's looking for a good quality of life. So water softener is definitely going to help you with that when it comes to the everyday usage of, you got to have water. You can't live without it, right? So it's important to make it as best as you can for you and your family. The other thing with city water that we've been dealing with more and more over the years is chlorine and chloramines. Chlorine has been used on city water for years now. The thing about chlorine, though, at this point is because areas here in the United States have grown so much, different communities popping up everywhere. The chlorine in some areas just is not powerful enough to kill bacteria and what have you, not that they have in the water that they need to meet the MCLs on through the state. So with that said, what's happening here is that they've been having to elevate the chlorine levels as high as they can possibly as high as they can possibly get them, and they're regulated by how high they can actually really go to an MCL, so MS contaminant level, as far as how much of a residual they can actually have before the EPA decides that it's not safe anymore. So what's happening here in some cases is that they're elevating it to the maximum level. So you're getting water in your home that has chlorine levels higher than a pool has, which is pretty ridiculous. You wouldn't drink pool water, and anybody that swims in a pool knows when you get out, if you don't rinse off, your skin and everything dries out pretty quickly, and that's majority from the chlorine in the water. So you want to be able to remove that. Now, in some cases, and it's becoming more and more, last time I checked, I think it's 20, maybe 30% of municipal water supplies here in the United States are switching to chloramine. Now, chloramine is a chlorine ammonia base, okay? And the reason they're switching to it is because it has the ability to stay in the water. It doesn't dissipate as fast as chlorine. Okay, so they don't have to elevate the parts per million so high in order to get the same effects that they were getting with the chlorine. But chloramine is another issue in itself, because now you're also dealing with not just chlorine, but you're dealing with ammonia, and it makes it really hard to remove. You can remove it with your standard typical carbon filters that a lot of water treatment companies are selling these days, including a lot of plumbers, the little cartridge filters that you put on the house and stuff like that. But the issue with that, with chloramines, is that they're not very effective using your standard granulated, activated, or coconut-based type carbon filters at higher flow rates. So your typical shower, for instance, if you're running it through a standard carbon filter, 1 cubic foot size, or just your standard little cartridge carbon filters, you're not going to effectively be able to remove that chloramine from the water at the higher flow rates. And I'm talking just a shower, not a big high flow type fixture. So what happens is you're not really removing it, and so you still have the health effects that chlorine and chloramine can cause, as well as chloramine itself, because the ammonia base is extremely corrosive to plumbing. It eats up everything that's metal. I know a lot of these homes these days have PEX, but you still have fittings that are brass. You still have a hot water heater, and you still have fixtures, and those all have some sort of metal in them. I've seen pictures and different reports from different plumbing companies across the nation where they're showing houses that are less than 5 years old, where they're replacing different parts of the plumbing in the home because the chloramines have deteriorated the pipes enough to where they're leaking. Okay, so it's a serious deal, and it's something that needs to be taken care of. So at this point in time, because of all the changes over the years, it's actually become equally important to remove the chlorine or chloramines from the water before your water softener, because it also is detrimental to your water softener resin bed, as well as the internal components of the water softener as well, as far as what's inside the control valve, spacers and seals, pistons, stuff like that. It's horrible for all that, including the resin bed. So it could actually end up cutting your resin bed life by 50%, which is huge because resin's not cheap. It's fairly expensive. And, it's kind of a pain in the butt to replace too. It can be done by a homeowner even, but it's still, it's work, right? So, where, typically if you go with a good resin, like a 10% cross-linked resin, which is what we use, which is a little bit more chlorine and chloramine resistant, it holds up a little bit better. But you're still talking, would you start hitting it with high chlorine chloramine levels on a regular basis, it's going to take a resin like that would normally go 20-30 years and cut it by 50% at least. So you're costing yourself money that way too, right? So some people look at the cost and will go, well, I don't want to use what we usually offer with our systems in these case, Eric, is an upflow. It's usually 1 cubic foot in diameter by 48-inch tall tank, or the most typical is 10 inches in diameter by 54 inches tall tank. That's what we want, 1.5 cubic foot of carbon in it. But we don't use the standard carbons that will not remove chloramine at higher flow rates. We use what we call catalytic carbon, which is a specialty carbon that is a lot more durable. It can remove chlorine and chloramines at higher flow rates than these other carbons. Okay. So when you're out there shopping around and you're looking at carbon filters, say, hey, Craig recommended I get a carbon filter. Remember, it has to be catalytic. If you get a standard carbon filter, you're not going to get the full benefits as you're running higher flow rates, such as a shower, for instance. Okay. So, so we highly recommend that you put an Upflow catalytic carbon filter in front of your softeners in order to give you good quality water throughout the whole house. Because you can remove the hardest minerals, but if you still have chlorine or chloramines in the water, you're still going to get dry skin. You're going to get a lot of the benefits of having soft water, obviously, because you have a softener, but chlorine and chloramines will still dry out your skin. It will still cause spotting and stuff on certain dishwares and glassware, stuff like that. And of course, everybody already knows chlorine and chloramines both have, possible health consequences by bathing in that water or drinking that water. It's not meant to be there. It's there for a specific purpose, is to kill bacteria. It's not there for you to drink. Get rid of it.
Excellent point to bring up, because a lot of people say I have hard water, I need a water softener, but it's worth examining kind of the whole picture if you want to have a really effective and holistic treatment that's going to get you the results that you're looking for without being disappointed.
Exactly. And you look at the cost factor, you're looking at 3 to 5 years payback, in the investment. And then you have systems that put together properly with the catalytic carbon filter and the softener. That's you're looking at 20 years, 30 years before you really need to, replace those systems, where they get to the point to where they're just worth replacing. So your investment gets repaid over and over and over again for quite a few years. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay. So You want to talk about private well water now, or Eric? Or
Yeah, let's hit private well water real quick, and then we'll jump into the types of softeners and what applications work best for what. But yeah, I think, as you know, a lot of people on private well water, they don't have the luxury of being able to look up their test results or these things on publicly available databases. So in that case, it is entirely up to them to know exactly what's going on and to treat it. So yeah, let's hit on that real quick.
water quality could vary greatly on that. You're dealing with hard water. Sometimes you're dealing with iron, manganese, sulfur, low pH levels, sediment, nitrates, high sulfates, bacteria, all kinds of different things you can be dealing with on private well water. The most typical is hard water, iron, and sulfur. Manganese in some areas is more prevalent than others. There's other areas where it's not around at all. So those are the main issues. The other issues I mentioned, low pH, some areas, very, very, very much a huge problem, but it's actually one of the easiest problems to resolve. So one thing about well water, and I've ran this across this over the years, especially when I was out doing service and stuff, where people would have a water treatment company come out, they would test their water, and they say, well, you need an iron filter, or you need a pH filter or a sulfur filter along with a water softener. Okay, so they install it for these folks, and then they call those companies, and the companies come out and they can't figure out why the system was working for the first month or so. Then after that, it just wasn't really working for them. What we have found over the years is that these guys aren't sizing their iron filters, pH neutralizer filters properly. They're not doing a well pump flow test on their well to make sure that the well pump itself is actually able to backwash and lift the bed and clean it on the filter system properly. And so they would put these big, humongous filters in, because the customer says, I want to irrigate with it. I want to do this. So I need 15 gallons per minute. Well, the well pump does 5 gallons per minute. And now you have a system in there that needs 10 gallons per minute to backwash to clean it. And of course, it's not going to work for very long, because you just can't, it just doesn't work that way. Okay. And so we've also added information to our website. It gave instructions to people where they could take a half an hour and actually test the flow rate of their well pump themselves. And that's how we recommend systems through our website. And when we talk to folks, based on all the different outlines, including what does your well pump actually produce. Okay. And that solves that issue. All right. So that's pretty much well water in a nutshell.
Let's talk about the different types of water softeners now. From a high level, there's two kinds: a salt-based water softener or a salt-free water conditioner. So let's just start by talking about the more popular type, which is the ion exchange salt-based water softener. If you want to just touch on how the ion exchange process works and the pros and cons of using that type of system. And if you also want to look at upflow versus downflow and high efficiency water softeners.
So salt-based water softeners, like you said, Eric, they've been around for a very long time. They use what we call an ion exchange method. The resin bed inside those tanks gets charged by sodium ions, and exchange the sodium ions for the hardness ions as the water runs through it to enter your home. The typical is that for every 10 grams per gallon of water hardness that the customer has, that the water softener is removing, it's exchanging 75 milligrams per liter of sodium. Now, that's a very small amount of sodium. Once you get up to 20 grains hard and you're up to 150 and so forth, still a very small amount of sodium in comparison to what, everyday foods and liquids that we take in, such as milk, 8-ounce glass has 120 milligrams of sodium just for 8 ounces alone. So it's, when you look at that, and the only reason I'm bringing that part of it up is because there is certain companies out there that will try to sell you salt-based softeners based on trying to scare you about the amount of sodium. You're replacing sodium for hardness, and sodium is bad. And well, it's such a small amount, it's not bad. It doesn't harm your plumbing. It doesn't harm you in most cases. It's unless you're on a low sodium restrict diet, then you have to watch what you're taking in on everything that you do, right? So So anyway, that's how traditional water softeners work. Doesn't matter who makes them, how they operate. They all have to use salt in order to operate and do what they need to do. Now, as far as a different type of salt-based water softeners, you have the traditional downflow water softener. The downflow water softener, what it does is the brine draws, rinses over the resin bed, and the way that works is you have a salt tank next to it. You have some salt in there as well as some water in there. It creates what we call a brine solution. Okay, so one of the parts of the regeneration process is there's a tube that goes from the side of the control valve on the softener to that salt tank, aka brine tank. And that sucks the brine solution out of that tank and rinses it over the resin from the top to the bottom of the resin bed. And it does it at a fairly decent rate of flow. And so the downfall of it, of the downflow, is that because it's going from the top of the resin bed down through the bottom at a fairly decent rate, the resin bed doesn't get 100% charge to it. And because of that, you're not going to get the capacity out of that system as you would otherwise doing what we call an upflow method. So it's a waste of salt because you have to regenerate more often using more salt, and it's a waste of water as well. Okay. Your other softeners out there work the same way, of course, but the upflow water softener, it also has the brine draw rinse as well through the regeneration process. But it does just the opposite. When it pulls the water out, it goes down through what we call a center distributor tube, and then it goes upward through the resin. So it's saturating the resin from the bottom up. And so it's forcing itself through the resin bed because it has to work itself through the weight of that resin bed. And it does, because of that, it does it at a very slow rate. So the end result is you get closer to 100% capacity out of that water softener. And which saves you in salt because you can regenerate with less salt because of that, as well as it saves you water, which is better saves the customer money, as well as it's better for the environment as well. Okay. So that's the difference between upflow and downflow. And that's why a lot of your newer water softeners these days, they're starting to push the upflow part of it, which one of the things that they are doing, though, is they're calling their upflow water softeners high efficiency water softeners. And yes, they will save you up to 30% in salt in comparison to your downflow water softeners when it comes to that part of it. And I say up to, depends on the circumstances. That does make them a higher efficiency water softener than your traditional type downflow water softeners. But they're really not considered to be high efficiency as far as being high efficiency rated through third-party rating agencies such as WQA, Water Quality Association, or IAPMO, which is similar to WQA as a third-party rating agency. A true high efficiency softener also has a lot of other features to it that helps you save additional salt and additional water. Like the Soft Pro water softener, for instance. It has a lot of different high efficiency features that you'll find on our website that listed out exactly what they're saving you and how they work. So you probably check that out if you're interested in that. The other type of softener out there has been around for a while is the salt-free water softeners. Unlike salt-based water softeners, which use the process called the ion exchange to remove the hard water minerals, salt-free water softener use a physical process known as template-assisted crystallization, short-term TAC. That process converts the hardness causing minerals in the water to hardness crystals, so they won't stick to surfaces in your home, which helps keep your appliances and your hot water heater free of hard water scale up. Salt-free water systems are also known as water conditioners because they don't actually remove the hardness from the water. They don't soften the water. They condition the water, or what we call neutralize the hardness minerals. And because these types of systems do not trap any minerals, there's no need for a cleaning cycle. So there's no backwashing or anything like that. to remove the captured ions from the water. So the pros of that system is there's no salt usage. There's no backwash, so there's no water wasted. There's no electricity needed. It can give the benefits of soft water when bathing, helps with skin and hair drying up, lessens soap and shampoo and cleaning supply uses. Everything that a traditional salt softener will do for you. The cons is that the water hardness minerals are still in the water, which will require regular wiping off, drying off surfaces where water spots can occur if they're left on there to dry on their own. We have found over the years, if you have water over 15 grains of hardness, they don't perform very well. There is a lot of claims out there where they'll remove water, not remove hard water, but treat hard water up to 30, 40, 50 grains. All these systems are the same. You can go to 5 different websites that offers this system, and we all use the same type of media. They work the same. Some claims are a little bit more robust than others. Okay. Our experience is that honesty is really the best policy. I think that's one of the reasons, besides knowledge and experience, that we've been in business for over 30 years and online for over 20. And we just throw it out there, 15 grains hard. If you have more than that, it's not going to be as effective. I mean, that's just the way it is. The other downfall of it is that the media is very sensitive to contaminants such as chlorine, chloramine, heavy metals, iron, manganese, low pH. So, city water, of course, it does have chlorine in it. It might have chloramines in it. It's definitely going to have some heavy metals in it, such as copper, for instance, or lead. In some cases, iron and manganese, low pH sulfur, not so much. City water municipal supplies usually treat that pretty well before it gets to you in most cases. There is certain parts of the states, such as parts of Florida, for instance, where we have found city water that's actually worse than some well water out there. So it's kind of hit and miss, but in most cases, you're pretty safe. So it's very important to install a carbon filter, a catalytic type upflow carbon filter before the salt-free systems in order to protect that media. So that's how the salt-free systems work. There is certain areas of the country where they have banned salt-based water softeners, specifically parts of Southern California, where you really don't have a choice. If it's better to have a salt-free softener and reap some of the benefits I've listed above, and just do your due diligence as far as wiping things off versus not having anything at all, right? So they do have a place on the market.
Really great points on the difference between salt and salt-free softeners, because that's a question that we get asked all the time. And of course, if you have the option of saying, salt versus salt-free, the allure of salt-free and saying, it's magic, I don't have to deal with salt, it's better for the environment. But there are pros and cons, and you just knocked off all of them. And that's going to be super helpful for people that have those questions between salt versus salt-free. And then also for those ion exchange softeners, upflow versus downflow. And the other element or treatment that we get asked about for not only pairing it with water softeners, but just kind of on a standalone basis, is reverse osmosis systems with hard water. So a lot of times you mentioned the sodium in the water. Some people, put that at their the point of use reverse osmosis systems under their kitchen sink as a way to remove the sodium. And some people just have the question of, well, if I have hard water, will a reverse osmosis system just take care of it by itself? So what are kind of under what circumstances, or what are the pros and cons of, and I'm talking a point of use reverse osmosis system at the kitchen sink. So what would you recommend for folks asking those kind of questions for a reverse osmosis system, whether it just works as a standalone system or to pair it with a water softener setup?
Reverse osmosis systems, and a lot of people don't know this, that is how you make bottled water. So when you go to the store and you buy your cases or your big bottle of bottled water, or you go to one of their machines and you fill up your 5-gallon jugs, those are reverse osmosis systems. So all you're doing is you're basically installing a bottled water machine in your home for point of use, which is for your drinking and cooking. If you have a refrigerator with an ice maker or cold water dispenser, you can run it to that as well. And that removes the sodium from the water, what we call TDS, total dissolved solids from the water, as well as because the part of the reverse osmosis process is a sediment filter, as well as a few different types of carbon filters. And then the last part of it is the membrane, which is the part that removes the TDS from the water, sodium and what have you not. You're also removing a lot of other contaminants that could be in the water as well, like those nitrates, herbicides, pesticides, petroleum products, cadmium, all kinds of different heavy metals, pharmaceutical products, all that type of stuff. So you basically have a bottled water machine at your fingertips right there, which is not a bad investment whatsoever, because a lot of people buy bottled water, and bottled water is expensive and it's inconvenient too, where and in some cases there has been reports in the news over the years where advocates went out there and they start testing bottled water, use a total dissolved solids meter. They're going, well, this company, they're selling bottled water, but this bottled water is, besides removing the chlorine from it, it's not any better than the city water that they're pulling it from, right? And they're making a lot of money from it. Where the reverse osmosis, if you have your own system, that it's actually running through the proper filtration in order to get you with good healthy water, right? So that's a reverse osmosis system. Now, going back to a whole house upflow carbon filter using catalytic carbon, now you use that, pair that with your water softener for the whole house, because that's going to remove the chloramines, byproducts from both of those products, pesticides, herbicides, petroleum products. Everything that a reverse osmosis system removes, except for the sodium, what we call the TDS for the water. It's not going to remove nitrates, stuff like that, but it's going to remove a bulk of the contaminants, at least 80 to 90% of those contaminants that a reverse osmosis will also remove. But it gets you the benefit for the whole house. And then if you want to go further, then you add the reverse osmosis just for your point of use. That's the proper way of doing it. A lot less expensive, a lot more environmentally friendly, and a lot less maintenance too, actually. So,
like you said, you have the catalytic carbon filter, the water softener that we went through, the water softeners, and then if you want to top that off with a point of use reverse osmosis system, most likely. That's kind of the spectrum of what would be an ideal treatment solution. Is there anything else as we look to put a bow on the ultimate hard water guide for folks listening to this? Anything else that you would throw in there with your over 30 years of treating unusual situations, or any just kind of bullet summary points as we look to wind this down?
well, I think some of the main takeaway points of this is one is you want to look for upflow water softeners that have true high efficiency system features built into the control valve, because these are systems that are going to last you. A good high quality water softener is going to last you, 10, 20, 30 years. It's just there for a very long time. So you spend a little bit of extra money in some cases over and above buying like a big box store type water softener, but you're getting a system that has a very good warranty. One of the things I've always looked at, not just in the water treatment industry, but on everything that I purchase when I'm making an investment like this, is I look at warranties, because in my opinion, warranties represent quality in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to something that has some sort of mechanical parts to it, right? So if you're looking at a softener that has a 1-year warranty or a 3-year warranty, you're like, well, to me, knowing what I know about it, I was like, that's not too good. That tells me that the quality of that system, the manufacturer of that system, the person that's selling it, they don't have a lot of faith in the quality of that system because they're not given a very good warranty on it. And warranties cost companies money, right? So you're not going to put a really great warranty on a product that that is going to end up having problems over a short period of time. So if you find a system that has a really good warranty on it, that generally represents quality. High efficiency, going back to that, because of the fact that you have a system that is high quality, it's going to last 10, 20, 30 years. If you have a system that's going to save you a lot on salt and save you a lot on water per regeneration, it has the long life ability to it, that system's going to end up paying you your return on investment. It's just going to be 3 times over, 4 times over. So my experience is that you're better off to go with not just an Upflow, but go with one that's high efficiency. Again, Upflow softeners will save you up to 30% in salt. They'll save you a very small amount in water, where a Upflow high efficiency will save you up to 75% in salt and up to 64% in water waste. That's a big difference. So you want to look at that when you look at those. Salt-free, again, we touched base on the pros and cons of that. The main takeaway point for that, there's 2. One is that the media average life is 5 years. Doesn't matter who you buy it from. We all get it from the same place, same manufacturer. So actually, there's 2 manufacturers, same thing though. And that's a big expense. It's 75% of the cost of the system. So you want to look at that. The other takeaway of the salt-free is that the minerals are still there. So unless you do your own physical maintenance on things, as far as wiping things down on a regular basis, you are still going to get some hard water buildup on certain glassware and stuff like that. The last part of the takeaway, regardless of what system you use, it's pretty imperative these days that you use an Upflow catalytic type carbon filter before your water conditioner, water softener, because that's going to protect you and your family from all the different things that chlorine and chloramine can do to your health, as well as the damage it can do to the plumbing in your home and your skin and everything else. So, as well as the damage you can do to your water softener resin bed and the water softener components inside the control valve. So it's a very good investment to have that Upflow catalytic carbon filter before those systems in order to protect your investment, not just your water softener investment, but your home and your health and just the quality of life in general. Remember, quality water equals quality life and quality health, which makes people happier. I mean, there's really no reason not to do it. So that's pretty much my main takeaway as far as everything that we've talked about here today.
I really appreciate it, and thank you so much for joining us. And for people that have any other follow-up questions, I'll put your contact information in the description below with all of the other resources we talked about. But what's the best way for people to follow along with you or Quality Water Treatment?
We have high quality, high trained agents that can help you out, as well as a lot of information on our website. So if you visit us at qualitywatertreatment.com, you can call our toll-free number and talk to a trained representative, or you can use the live chat on our website or Facebook Messenger, or you can just send us an email. We're always here to help you out and give you the best advice that we could possibly give you. We're not into selling you, the highest cost system that we have. We're not into doing a cookie cut approach. We're into making sure that you get the best system that is going to benefit you and your family for now and in the future.